As we've all changed as guitar players from the first time we ever picked one up to today, our practice routines have probably, and certainly should have, changed with us. Personally, mine has changed quite a bit over the years, and I've tried to keep a good eye on exactly what I made mistakes with in the past and what was a really good decision. This video is all about knowing the things you could be doing and how to form the best practice routine. As a beginner, I would generally just learn from tabs and then write little riffs or instrumental songs. While this could be seen as a total waste, or mostly a waste of time, it did cement a certain amount of creativity and focus on technique. A couple of years later, when I auditioned at Berklee College of Music, I realized just how much I hadn't been learning. The teacher auditioning me, for instance, asked me in the audition, "Hey, can you play a F-sharp minor 7 arpeggio?" And I said, "Yeah, I have no idea how to do that." And he said, "You just played an F-sharp minor 7 chord, just arpeggiate it." Kind of embarrassing. Luckily, I got in, presumably because my technique was okay, and I was an okay guitarist, but obviously a complete beginner musician. What really helped me grow as a player and musician over the next few years was the following: scales and knowing the notes of the fretboard, chords and their inversions, working on rhythm, whether it's strumming exercises or single note exercises, or just learning incredibly hard prog rock and metal songs, learning music theory, transcribing solos, and listening to a lot of different kinds of music. A lot. As you can see, it's a lot of fundamental areas. I realized I didn't have the strongest foundation to stand on and needed to play catch up in building one. If you're in a beginner stage, I'd highly recommend building your routine off of these fundamentals, although I would add one area which I unintentionally ignored, which I would think of as a huge misstep: learning songs. I learned songs kind of as I needed to. For instance, a friend asked me to play his recital, so I learned that set. I led a little trio and we played around, and I knew that set. Videos of both of those bands are actually the first videos I ever uploaded to YouTube back a million years ago. And even though they were a little cringe every now and again, when I'll look at them, I'm like, well, I was playing for 3 years at the time. I'm kind of proud of myself. Especially level 5. I dare any of you to listen to it and try it, by King Crimson. It's a very tough song. Why I would add learning songs to all that is because while I was gaining a good amount of knowledge of scales, theory, chords, etc., I wasn't spectacularly musical. Being at a school filled with child prodigies, I was deathly aware of how far musicianship and musicality could go. Which leads me to the intermediate practice routine. Big reveal, it's basically just the beginner practice routine, but more challenging. Instead of just playing scales and then chords and then learning some theory and separating everything, this was a time period where I was trying to mesh everything together. I was trying to play scales with any kind of rhythmic accuracy and with any kind of phrasing, an important note, over chord progressions that would change keys, and using my theory knowledge to determine what to play over what chord when, etc. One thing that was huge for my development was starting a cover band with a friend that would go on to play a ton of shows over my senior year, as well as saying yes to literally anyone who asked me to do anything. I easily learned over 100 songs that year in styles that were maybe more mainstream or maybe more closely aligned with what I normally listened to, especially before going to school. Those songs were, in general, a lot easier than a fusion jazz standard or prog rock standard. Playing show after show and solo after solo gave me opportunity after opportunity to use those fundamentals in a musical way. I was no longer just playing with a metronome, I was also playing with different drummers and seeing how different feels affected the songs. I was playing with different guitarists and seeing how our styles meshed or didn't. And I was playing the same songs in a duo, trio, 4-piece, 5-piece, acoustic, or electric setting. Keeping the fundamentals in my practice routine but adding a ton of playing really helped push me from beginner to high intermediate, which is what I would think that I graduated at. At this time I also led a band, and I took them into the studio, and the process of recording, especially with my full amount of gear, trying to get the right sounds, trying to play the right parts, was a much different experience than having a little recorder in front of me while I did my practice routine. Recording in general is always useful and generally, at least for me, incredibly humbling. All this leads me to pro-level practice routines. The answer to what a pro-level practice routine looks like is that I just don't really know. There's honestly just a part of me, and a relatively big part of me, that only views my heroes, like the giants of music, and maybe the most successful musicians of the day as pros. I have other feelings about it, but feelings aside, the routines I've mostly seen are self-directed unless the player is learning a new genre or new style altogether. Whether you're an amazing blues player that wants to try classical, someone who's played in a band a lot and wants to try the one-person band like Tommy Emmanuel, or a jazz player that wants to try out metal, having a teacher from that style help you out is a great idea. Otherwise, players at this level generally have some kind of self-awareness about what their strengths are and their weaknesses are, and they can choose to work on them or become a little stagnant knowing that they'll get work anyway. All that is a little more nebulous, I know, but it is more nuanced at this stage. Two of my musical heroes, for instance, are Tigran Hamasyan, who continually just gets better and more absolutely insane with his music, and it's really difficult and challenging, but also interesting and gorgeous and all the other things, and Eric Johnson, who generally plays really hard instrumental rock, and then all of a sudden decided to do like an acoustic and piano-based singer-songwriter album. I would see both of those moves as generally artistic as opposed to having like a practice routine in mind. So at the pro stage, you can either basically enjoy a nice plateau or dive into your own nuances or another style and just never stop learning. That's the one beauty of music, is that even if you're a pro in one area, you're probably a newbie in another area, and there's always more to learn. It really comes down to each their own. Please comment, like, and subscribe. I love talking to you guys, and I'll see y'all next week.